A while ago I posted a video to YouTube called "Can you help me to identify this wood?" And this is pallet wood, and I've had it for quite a while now. And the video got loads of comments, and I read through all of them and did a bit of research, and I now believe this to be meranti, which was suggested by a chap called Christian Wilson. So thank you, Christian. And today I'm going to be using this wood to make a jewellery box for my girlfriend. So here's what I have, 6 pieces in total, and I'm going to begin by cutting out these pieces with nail holes in. All of these pieces are slightly warped, and you can see that just by sighting down the edge of the board. So I'm going to straighten all of these up on the jointer.
I first jointed one edge of each board.
And now I can see that these edges are nice and straight.
And then I jointed one face of each board.
The colour in this wood varies quite a lot, and that's one of the things that I like about it. It ranges from this very pale yellow to light brown and even pink.
I put the boards together into pairs, grouping those with similar colourings and grain patterns. Then I glued and clamped together the jointed edges of the boards, with the jointed faces placed downwards onto the flat surface of my workbench. The following day I removed all of the clamps and then took each board over to the thicknesser to clean up the faces that had not earlier been jointed. I took all the boards down to around 14mm in thickness.
The knives on my jointer really need to be resharpened, and I'm not getting a very good finish with them at the moment.
I mainly used the hand plane just to clean up the boards to get rid of the tear out caused by the thicknesser. This wood does seem to be quite prone to tear out. With my cutting iron in the hand plane freshly sharpened, I got a really nice smooth finish on the wood and it looked great. This part of the project was quite a bit of work, and it created a lot of shavings too. Next I took some measurements of the panels and decided what size to make the box. Then I ripped the panels to the right width, and then after choosing 4 panels to form the box, I wanted to cut some 45-degree joints onto the panels, so I set my table saw blade to that angle with the digital angle gauge and used my panel cutting sled to make the cuts. I first cut one side of each of the 4 boards, then I marked up the lengths I wanted, lined that mark up with the blade, and at the other end of the board I made a mark onto the fence of the sled so that I could line up the next board with that mark for repeatable cuts. Here I'm cutting the miters for the 2 shorter sides of the box, using the same trick again with the mark on the sled fence to keep them both the same size. And then dinner was ready.
Dinner's ready.
What is it?
Rice and a salady relishy thing with chilli, sloppy joe and a bread roll type thing.
Now that I've got the 4 panels cut to form the box, I think that it's going to be a little bit too long, so I'm going to cut down these panels. I want to cut a dado close to the bottom in each panel, which will accommodate a piece of this 5mm plywood. These panels are around 14mm thick, so I'm going to make the dado slot around 6mm deep. So I'll set my table saw blade height using these calipers. And I want the slot to be about 10mm from the bottom of the panel, so I'll set my fence to 10mm.
I first made a single pass on each panel which created a 3mm dado, as that is the kerf of my blade. Then I moved the fence by 2mm, as in theory this would give me a 5mm dado. So I did a test cut. Now I can check to see if this dado joint is wide enough to accommodate the plywood, and that fits really nicely. So then I could cut the rest.
I've got the panels of the box held together with one of these band clamps, and I'm just going to measure the internal dimensions. 221 by 141. As my dado joints are 6mm deep, I need to add 5mm twice to each of these dimensions. And the reason I'm using 5 instead of 6 is just to ensure that the panel will fit during the glue up. So I need to cut my panel 231mm by 151mm. And that panel looks like it will fit nicely. Before I glue up the box, I'm just going to give the inside faces of the box a sanding, because it will be much easier to do this now rather than later.
I applied glue to both the miters and the dado joints, and then I could assemble.
Okay, that looks pretty good. Unfortunately, I've only got one of these clamps, so I'm going to use some rubber bands. So now we have a box, and I've chosen another panel for the lid of the box, which is this one here. So I need to cut this to size, and I'm thinking that I might also cut a rebate into the lid to recess it inside the box slightly, and that's mainly just because I don't want too much of this end grain to be visible on the sides of the box. So that's 253 by 172. Okay, that fits nicely, and now I just need to measure up for the rebate.
I made some reference marks onto the top panel and then checked the distance between the marks to check that it matched the internal dimensions of the box.
The thickness of the lid is around 15mm, so I think I'm going to set my blade height to around 10mm. And I've made some marks on the sides just to help me line up these cuts with the blade.
I made a series of passes on the table saw, adjusting the fence by a few millimeters between each pass to remove the material.
And now I can clean up those cuts with a chisel. And now to see if this fits. And it doesn't. I think I need to take about 2mm off both the width and the length of the lid. And that looks like it's going to fit nicely now, so I'm going to add some glue. And now I can just add a few clamps, and I've got a couple of scrap pieces here to help evenly distribute the pressure.
Next I cleaned up the edges of the top panel flush with the box using the hand plane.